All right. Welcome to a new week today, you guys. There are a couple things that I want to check here real quick. It looks like the chat is up. Everyone say hello. Let me say hello in the chat as well. Let's just make sure that's working. So a couple things that I noticed just when, well, first I just want to say, like, good job everyone on getting your technology login challenge done. And under lab 2, what is your, hey Eric, what is your name in class? I'm sorry, I don't know your, with your like tag or whatever. I'm just not sure who you are. So I just want to be able to say your name and not your ID. But anyways, back to the technology login challenge. Everyone did a really good job. I appreciate it. There were a couple things where mostly I was seeing people were having a little bit of issues logging into Cinema 4D. That one is more understandable. It's definitely more of a complex way about having to get the licensing for it. Okay, hey Sarah. I'll try and remember that, okay? Forgive me if it slips my mind. My brain is full of stuff all the time. And so I will try my best to remember that. But yeah, everyone did a good job. The Cinema 4D one was the challenge for everyone. Just make sure that when before you submit the assignment that you read through and make sure you have all the deliverables. I went through and left comments on some of the assignments for some of you who maybe needed to just add a little bit more. But again, I won't knock off points for it being late at the moment. I just want to see that you guys are all able to log into the programming and work with it. Other than that, yeah, it was a good week for you guys. Everyone's done the syllabus thing, so let's keep this rolling. I wanted to just kind of recap a little bit of what we did last class. We talked about the 3 bouncing balls. I went over the bouncing ball. This is the one we're creating. I extended the time for you guys because I realized I didn't really talk about rendering in After Effects, which is really important for you guys to know. And so I wanted to hit on that a little bit more today. So I extended the date until tomorrow, the due date for them, so that you guys have a little bit of an extra chance to get those in and render them out. But I went over the 3D. We did the 3D animated ball and then inside of Cinema 4D, and then we did the 2D hand-drawn animated ball inside of Adobe Animate. I left this, the After Effects ball for you guys to do on your own. We did talk about the workflow here, starting with creating it inside of your programs and then moving down into compositing inside of After Effects. And then from there, we will be... you'll add the titles, I know, in the video here. This is another one right here. I think it's that video and this video are the ones that I wanted you guys to watch on your own time. I went a little bit over last class and didn't get to these, but this one is the After Effects video right there. And then this one talks about compositing and also talks about rendering. But I still wanted to go over the rendering with you guys real quick. So the deliverables for this one was an MP4 of all 3 of the balls. So one video with all 3 of them together. I don't want to see a bunch of separate files because that's not what I'm requesting from you. And it has to be in our standard high definition. The YouTube setting in Media Coder, I will talk about that in a second. And then just make sure that the ball repeats the bounce 4 times for all 3 of the balls. the reason I want to see it bounce multiple times is because I want to just be able to make sure the motion looks smooth, and that you guys did the easing inside of the programs, and it just gives me a second to watch it, you know, on repeat. Plus, one bounce isn't enough really for a video. If you're sending that into a client, they're going to be like, well, where is the rest? So we definitely want to hit on that. And then in the video where we talk about adding the titles and compositing, we will explain how to add those titles in there and how to fade them in and out. So just make sure you guys watch these. These ones are a lot shorter. They're not 2-hour videos. And then down here, let me see, is the criteria. I think it's this one. I'm trying to get this right. Yeah. This is what I'm going to be looking at when I start grading your work, right? Not only if you deliver the deliverables in the formats that I'm asking, but also that you're paying attention to what I am asking here, like specifically what I am looking for within the animations. So when you guys go to turn in projects, I want you to just, you know, take the time. Like I said, I'm not going to be a stickler as far as projects being in at the right, you know, at 11:59 by a certain. I will take them a little late. That's not a problem. But I would rather you guys hand it in completed. And so just take your time and go through this. And when you're ready to turn it in. And there is absolutely, I'm always going to have critiques, right? That is part of the class is, oh, come on, get out of here. I think it's stuck. No. Okay, there we go. You know, I'm going to critique your work and let you know like where improvements can be made and where you guys did a really good job. Because the whole point of this class is really you're getting an assignment, and you turn that assignment in, and I review it, and I tell you what can be changed about it, and then you're going to go back and you're going to change those things. You know, that's how we do it in the in our career. That's, you know, so it's more about working in a back and forth manner and making sure we're communicating and stuff, rather than like, you didn't get it in right on time. You know, I don't want you guys to stress about that, because we are learning programs and they're pretty dense. So, so if you guys have questions about the bouncing ball, go ahead and ask me. But this week, I opened up a couple modules for you here. I opened up the Introduction to Motion Graphics and the typography. This one is a little bit of a heavier topic. I'm going to go as much as I can through this class about typography today, and we'll probably pick up where we left off on Thursday, as well as answering all those participation videos that you guys sent in. I have almost all of your participation videos. There's just a few that I'm missing right now, which is great. So hopefully I can cover maybe some of your questions today in today's live stream. And if not, we'll address them on Thursday at the beginning of class. That's how it's going to work. Participation questions will be done every Thursday as a reminder for you guys. And I'll be watching them, answering your questions, and you know, helping you try and troubleshoot issues or talk about projects and different things that you guys are going to encounter. So let us move on to... Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I have it closing, and I will probably most likely make the participation grades close the night before class. So every Wednesday is when the participation module is going to close. That is the only one that I will be closing. That's the only one that has a time constraint on it, that like a hard time constraint for you guys. So I will need you to do that, because that is essentially your attendance for the class. So thanks for getting those in, you guys. But let's jump into Introduction to Motion Graphics. This is not like going to be a massive project. This is mostly about you guys learning kind of what motion graphics is, what it entails, creativity around it, and the graphic design that goes into motion graphics. You know, you're going to hear that term used fluidly throughout this semester, right? Motion graphics and animation animator, they're one and the same. We're doing the same thing. Motion graphics is essentially just moving graphics on screen, which is animation. So you'll hear me refer to us as both of them, both animators and motionographers. But here are really good videos that you guys need to watch regarding motion graphics and like introduction to it, and more of an idea of like what kind of everything entails, right? So I'm gonna have you guys watch there's like a LinkedIn Learning one. So that was, this is a reason why I needed you guys to be able to log into LinkedIn Learning. You guys are going to have to watch this. And then the Creative Spark one, this is also by Beeple, and this, 5 videos. So you guys got to, carve out a decent chunk of time to watch these. They're nothing really long. Like I think the longest one maybe is 10 to 15 minutes, but don't quote me on that. But you have 4 videos here and 5 videos here, and then we're gonna have a slew of other videos. And this is what I'm saying, you guys are gonna want to keep up with stuff. But the PBS Off Book is a series that they did a while ago, and so these are some really good. These ones in particular are some really good videos regarding motion design and motion graphics. The Motionographer Story. This one right here. Turn my cap lock off. You guys are going to want to watch that as well. So a few LinkedIn Learning. I also added this one actually today because you're going to hear me refer to keyframes a lot and easing keyframes. Easing keyframes in motionography, motion graphics and animation is everything. You're going to hear me say a lot that linear is bad, right? There's only a couple times that we actually want to use linear keyframes, but in general, linear keyframes are bad. Make sure you're always checking keyframes before you submit projects or before you're ready to render, right? So this is a good one to add in your notebook as far as what to check before. You should have a checklist or start a running checklist of the things you need to do before you render out videos and before you submit them. And this is the one. No linear keyframes. We do not want them. And so this right here, if you click on it, it's just a really quick article that talks about the different kind of keyframes that we use in animation and motion graphics. And it also coincides with these GIFs that show exactly what they're talking about. So it's really nice that you get a visual along with an exclamation or an explanation and definition of like what keyframes are and what do we want to do. And then down here we have the Motionographer Awards, which are huge. These were, in fact, this one, I accidentally entered this into the wrong area, but the Motionographer, this one right here, and this one go together. So you're going to see them talking to a gentleman in this video that's going to coincide with, he is the one that created the Motionographer Awards. But you're going to want to go through and open these, and it's really just being able to see what people in our field are doing right now and what kind of work you can produce if you work hard enough at it and, stick within the program. I know not everyone in the program right now is an animation major, but I will say this. If you are a graphics design major, you will look better to companies if you have some animation work under your belt, because they want to see, I don't want to say unfortunately, but You know, as our fields expand, animation is becoming bigger in marketing and commercial use, and not just graphics, right? As motionographers, we also know graphic design work. And so being able to make those things move gives you kind of one up against your competition when you go to look for jobs. So knowing animation is actually really important. And you'll see that, like, if you go to regular LinkedIn, not LinkedIn Learning, but the social side of it, and you start typing in like graphic design, you'll see in a lot of descriptions that they will, you know, say, you know, what their requirements are. But, you know, if you know these things, that puts you ahead, and you'll see a lot of their animation as well. So it's really becoming an important field, and they're kind of blending together. But good motionographers, good animators, are first designers, right? We have to remember our rules of design and what we've learned in those graphics design classes and those illustration classes, as well as what we learn in like everyday life, right? And then you take those things, you bundle them all up into your brain, and you essentially put them into your work that you're outputting for animation. And so design is really important too for an animator and motionographer. And so I highly recommend watching other design channels that don't do animation. They just talk about, you know, graphic design and a lot of things about color and placement of objects and type. Type is a huge one, like today we're going to talk about. But all in all with this, I want you guys to watch all the videos, and then I want you to, here is what your assignment is for this module specifically. You're going to write 150 words in a Slack post, give or take. You know, I just want like it to have substance. You don't have to literally count it. But I want it to be a decent paragraph. You know, what kind of work you want to make. Even if it isn't animation, you guys can just talk kind of like why you're taking the animation class as a graphic design major, right? What tools are used in motion graphics? I want you guys to talk about this. In your reaction to the videos, I want you to, you know, 4 screenshots of these winners or nominees, either one I'm okay with, that you watch in this section. And I want you to explain, you know, what you found inspirational to it. Be sure to include the link to the entire work so that other students can watch, or the studio who submitted it. And then add the screenshots, 4 screenshots total, and it can be of different ones. And then this is another thing, commenting on 3 other people's posts. So I want you guys, you know, it is kind of hard as an online class to get to know your fellow students. And so I want you guys to, you know, interact with each other, because as digital artists, we are finding that, especially right now after COVID, really COVID kind of drilled down on this, and you guys were in the midst of it happening. But working remotely is huge now in digital art. I work remotely from my day job. I rarely go in. I go into the office to pick up like footage and stuff, but that is about it. I don't actually work at an office. I work from home. And so, you know, making sure that you're communicating with each other and building that rapport with other students is great, because in fact, there are students that I went to school with at GCC who I still talk to today. And, you know, we discuss work and kind of what they're doing and where they're at, which is awesome, because you're going to find that when you move out of school, when you're out of the school setting and you're in the work setting, you won't want to have contacts. You're going to want to have people that you know and people who you feel comfortable working with, that you can hit up whenever you need to and be like, hey, do you want to collaborate on a project? Or, you know, if you're freelancing and you're too busy, like I know this other animator or designer who has availability right now, why don't you contact them? And so becoming a network for each other is really, really important. And that's why we want to see you guys interacting with each other in Slack. So you know, drilling this point home as well is if you guys have questions, and they're not really complex questions, even technical, artistic, all of it, even if they are complex, ask them inside of Slack. You know, just last class, I think, Brian, you were the one that was helping me with shortcuts in Adobe Animate because I just wasn't as comfortable with those shortcuts. Thank you. Sorry, just someone opened my door for me and I asked them to. Anyways, yeah, so these are the parameters of this assignment right here. Go ahead and get them done. I think I have it due next Tuesday, so that's plenty of time. Yeah, Monday, 11:59. So you have all of Monday to do it. So it's really due Tuesday before class. So try and get those done. You know, like I said, we don't want to fall behind. So keep up on the work. Let's go out of this module. And let's get into the meat and potatoes here in just a second. Before I do that, let's jump back to last class and talk about rendering inside of After Effects. So I have the project that we worked on last class here pulled up. Let's say I've done everything I need to do, and now I want to render the video out so that it is compressed into its final form so I can send it off to my client or whoever it's going to go to, or to me, because you guys will be submitting this. Yeah, Sarah, usually everyone in the digital media arts program is pretty nice, you know. It's a good mix of people. A lot of us are introverts, and you know, we like to do Matey does make it. He made his return. But we like to do our work alone and stuff, but really just opening it up and collaborating with other people. There are so many things you learn from your peers and ideas that you get from them. And so, you know, lean on each other and have fun with it, right? All of this is about having fun, especially right now, since we can and we're kind of loose on, we'll get a little bit more loose on the creativity a little later in class, where you guys will have a little bit more free range to do things that you want, versus like in the working world, you're going to have a specific thing you have to make for people. And so it might not be as creative and as fun. So make that fun, creative stuff here and collaborate with each other. But back to Matey. We're wanting to send this over to a client. The first thing that you do is you want to make sure that you're either selected on the timeline down here or that you have your composition up here selected. That just tells After Effects that this is specifically what I am looking at to render. And rendering is just essentially like compiling everything together. It's a process of compressing the video into like one MP4, taking all this information and making it a video. And up in the top area, we have the composition tab. We're going to click on that. And then there are certain instances where you will add to the render queue. We're not going to talk about that right now. We'll get to that maybe later in class. What you want is to add to Adobe Media Encoder, right? Let me see here. Go back down. And click on that. Okay, and so whenever you click on the Adobe Media Encoder, this program pops up. It is a separate program from After Effects, but it is linked to this and also to Adobe Premiere. And this is basically its own little rendering system. It uses, you know, what's nice about this is usually if you're rendering something here, you can make changes, at least in Adobe Premiere. I'm not positive as far as After Effects. I try not to make live changes to things that I'm rendering because I don't want to break my computer. You know, it's already under a lot of stress. So you're going to, down at the bottom here, oh, I don't know if I can, I think my one program closed. Hold on one second. It seems to be working still. There we go. Okay. This area, don't really ever worry about this at the moment. I never even look at this section. I think it's just like picking where you're going to save things, but we do it a different way. This section down here, the preset browser, this is going to be a great tool for you guys, especially in the beginning when you're unsure of how to render things out specifically, or if you're looking for a specific destination for a video to live, right? Like, let's say you want to specifically render a video out for Vimeo or for YouTube or for Instagram. This is where you're going to find the settings for those videos. And so you can either scroll through like this and you're going to see a lot of different settings. This is for TV broadcast. I'll close out. We're not going to use that. We won't use the camera one. You're not going to use it's like DVDs are essentially outdated. What we're going to do is we're going to go up into the search bar and we're going to type in, we can type in YouTube because usually that's where everyone's lives. And you're going to see here that a group of videos pops up under social media area, and it's going to give different kind of settings for each one of those videos. We're always going to do 1920 by 1080. Always, always, always. 4K, you know, some people would think, why not do 4K? You know, a lot of people have 4K TV and stuff. A lot of people aren't going to watch your animations necessarily on a television, let alone a 4K television. A majority of people watch these videos on their phones or on a computer. And this is just, in general, it's a high enough setting. And also you have to think about your computing power, right? The higher the definition of the video, the longer it's going to take, just in general. And also, we don't set our composition settings to this. Remember, like, you have to also think about matching your composition settings when you're going to render. And so we're just going to select the 1920 by 1080. I'm going to just bring it over here and drag it. This over here, you noticed like right away when I had opened up the program, my composition, yeah. I mean, your hard drive, maybe with an animation, if it's a short animation, it's not going to take as long. But if you're like, you got to think, once you start stacking effects, and if you have footage in there or high definition or high resolution imagery, it's a lot to have to like move that every frame. And like, because you also have to think it's like computing positions, rotations, like all the stuff that you put into it. It's got to figure that out and just like kind of glue it all together into one video. And it is definitely, it's rough and it takes a long time to upload those as well. So just stay away from it right now. I mean, I don't even know if you're going to use that in the film. If you guys take film production or any of those courses, I don't know if they use it there. But yeah, loading them, you're right, Sarah, loading videos at 4K takes a lot longer. You know, it's harder on your internet. So we're just going to be good to everyone that we're sending this to, and we'll just do it in high def. But this right here pops up automatically. This is your composition that you have selected that you want to render out. And you sometimes, like, you can select multiple and there will be a list here. If you want to remove it, you just right click and hit remove. You can also duplicate these. But you don't ever have to really change this H.264. It's just an encoding method that the computer uses. This is generally what I use all the time. You know, that's going to make a .mp4 video. A .mov is a little bit different. That's a QuickTime video. But we're not going to render those out in here. We want to always see MP4s. And so we're just making sure our setting is correct. Yes, our preset. You can always click this as well and scroll down and check, you know, the 1080p full HD one down here at YouTube. Now this right here, the output file section, this is where your render is going to end up. once it's complete. So you always want to click on that, and it's going to take you to your file, your file explorer, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And then you will just, let's say I'll go to my desktop and I'll navigate to the folder I wanted in. This was our introduction class. And then I'm going to create a new folder called renders. And actually, if you want something to move to the top of the list, like if you're constantly accessing a folder that you don't want to scroll through all the rest for, if you just put an underscore in front of it, it will automatically bring it to the top, because it's a character, it's like a symbol character, and it's not an actual letter, and so it doesn't really alphabetize. I don't think asterisks work, so just stick to like an underscore. That's the best. And I'm going to double click that, so I've got that folder selected. You can see right here, it'll give you if you hover over, it'll give you the directions to which folder you're doing. And then you just hit play. This tiny little button up here, you're going to hit play, start the queue. And once I do that, you're going to see that it just starts doing all this kind of random stuff. It's just making sure that it's collecting all the information, and it rendered. This took 2 seconds because there is no actual animation in this frame. But if I click on that, it'll bring me automatically to that video. And then, it'll play it. But like I said, I don't have anything moving on this. So, but that is one thing I really wanted to talk to you guys about, as far as like rendering. And I wanted to touch base on that specifically before you guys send me the bouncing balls. If that was your question for this week, like what do I do once I composite all of it? At least I've hit on it now. And then, I'll just mention that. I'm not going to dock you guys for that or give you guys grief for it. I realized that I didn't get to that last week. So, yeah, so that's what this is called, rendering again. And another thing to do to add to your list of things to do before I submit. Let's do this here. Things to do before submitting. Yeah. Okay, number 1, check your comp settings. Sorry, it ran off screen a little bit there. Check your comp settings. Make sure it's 1920 by 1080, 24 frames a second. Remember, you can do that up here in the project panel up here in the corner. You can check your frame rate right there automatically, and interpret the footage if you need to. Another thing, the second thing that you want to do, I said earlier in class, let me think about it. Oh, it's been a long day. Just making sure your comp settings are correct here. Rewatching your video when you render. That's really important. It will get boring. You will get tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over again. But it's important then, if it gets to that point, take a break, take a 10-15 minute breather, get up, stretch, do something, and then come back to it with fresh eyes, because you want to watch how it's ending up. And then you also don't want to end up with like a lot of blank, like black screens and frames at the end of your videos. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. Or you don't want there to be issues with something, or sometimes media encoder, and it happens every so often. I even encounter it. There's going to be like some kind of issue with the render, and it will render things out really weird, or you're going to have like some kind of weird glitching, even though you're not seeing it in your project inside of After Effects. When you play it back, you're not seeing any issue. It's just that something that happened when it was encoding. And so rewatch that video just to make sure that you know what it looks like before you submit it, because I've done that before to a boss, and it wasn't fun because it was kind of embarrassing. You're like, I'm really sorry, I didn't watch it over again. And that's kind of like the 101 of animation and video editing, like delivering stuff. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention, which I couldn't remember a second ago, but it came to me. Check your keyframes. No linear, right? We don't want any linear keyframes. I will tell you when. We will use some possibly today in one aspect. The only time, I will just tell you right now, the only time you use linear keyframes is when you're animating a camera in 3D. So when we start putting 3D, or when we put cameras in our 3D scenes inside of Cinema 4D, you don't want those to move, you don't want easing on those, because that's not really what happens when you watch television, right? It's like a continuous motion that happens. So we'll talk about that more if we get to that one today. But yeah, do you guys in the chat have any questions about rendering or render settings or anything like that? Close that out. I'm going to say no questions. So let's move to typography. I'm so dry today, you guys. I'm just like, I can't drink enough water to save my life. It just gets worse when you get older too. So something to look forward to. All right, let me see here. I don't need this. I do need this. Okay. Here's the assignment for this week as well. Again, some more videos to watch here. Ines Saltz talks a little bit about typography. Typography is something that you will use every single day in animation, especially if you end up in marketing. If you end up doing animating like cartoon based, even, I mean, they still have text. You have the titles, and you have you have like everyone's names and stuff at the end when the ends of shows or videos or movies happen. And then there's typography and title sequences before films and television shows. And you use it all the time. I literally, I think a majority of animation that I do at the marketing company I work for, when I do an animated video, the likelihood of it having typography is 100%. Actually, like every single video I use has type in it. And so it's really important to know the fundamentals of typography and to understand what a grid is, and hierarchy and things like that, which we'll touch on a little bit more here in a second. But it's something you're going to use. It's super major. Like, I don't know how else to put it, in both the real world and at school. So you want to make sure that you're taking, like I said, all of that knowledge that you've acquired inside of your graphics design courses and then applying it here, because first and foremost, this is a design class. And so I want to see good type. I want to see sticking to rules and guidelines. I'll give you them here in a minute. And I want to see, I don't want to see crazy typography. A lot of type nowadays is minimal. You see a lot of type that doesn't look like a lot on screen, and that is okay. That is fine for now. Like, you don't want to start getting too crazy. The crazier you get, if there's no intention behind that design, then why is it there, right? There is good design, and then there is design that doesn't work. And the design that doesn't work is when there's too much going on and there's no intention for it. You have to be deliberate when it comes to typography and just design in general. And especially with type in motion, if you send a portfolio out and you've got like papyrus text on there. It is literally a running joke within the design community about how often papyrus has been used. And it's just overused. Like at this point, it is a dead text. People do not want to see it. And you will get immediately like chopped from even having a chance at getting a job if you don't know good typography, and if you don't know how to, like, you know, if you don't know how to establish a layout with that typography. And so we're going to talk about that here. But, you know, this is probably the strictest I am going to be on rules in this class is when it comes to typography, because it is so important. You know, there's a reason these rules are so strict. Like I just said, you'll get like dismissed from even having an opportunity to interview if you have bad type in a reel. I've seen it. You know, in my position, I'm a senior animator and editor, and I go through portfolios and I go through people's reels when they submit it, and we will know in the first 5 seconds if it is worth watching the rest of it. And it says a lot. Like, it's kind of crazy to think that way, but that is, it's just how our brains work. And if you don't know like the basics of this, then it's going to usually display that you might not be ready for that position at that moment. But, you know, there's some rules that I want to touch on here. The reason, or when you see type on screen, right, it's there to be able to read it. So one of the things I want you guys to add to like your list of ongoing stuff that you need to know, especially about text, legible. It needs to be legible. You need to be able to sit there and read it. Whether it's static, whether it's like a static image or it is moving, there needs to be enough time for someone to read it. If it comes on screen really quick and then goes off and you can't read it out loud, then that is a problem. And I'll mention that to you. And that's a lot of, I think that's the biggest hurdle that students face when they first start animating text is moving things around too fast. You know, you want to have like, start thinking in beats, right? You want to be on there for at least a few beats so that, you know, before you take the text off screen, you want someone to be able to read it, recognize it, and then move on. The other thing that, you know, when it comes to reading things on screen is like our brains instantly try to decode the information. So being legible is just, you know, when it's not legible, it's extremely frustrating, and not even to, it's mostly frustrating to the viewer, right? They're just going to be like, I couldn't read that. It's so, I'm assuming a lot of you guys probably watch YouTube videos or like Twitch, you know, even, you know, in TikTok. So when things are on so fast and you have to sit there and you have to go back, or you have to, you know, it's annoying. We all get annoyed doing it. So just, you know, keep those things in the back of your mind when starting this project. Professionals, you know, we have a sense you're going to start seeing this kind of stuff more as you go forward in your daily life. Like, you're going to start watching commercials differently, you're going to start watching television differently, movies, all that stuff, and you're going to start to recognize when things are good and when things are bad, and when stuff is really impressive. So as far as this module goes, you know, watch this video here from Ina, and then also a great resource, great resource for graphic design and type in general is The Future. There is no E after it. His name is Doe. What is his name? Like, it's not Justin Doe. I'll have to remember. It's something along the lines. But he is, let me see if I can go to it right now. Yeah. You know, he's very business driven too. Like he talks a lot about the business side of graphic design. He specifically does graphic design. He is not an animator, but his techniques and his rules for text are really important, and he goes through a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure it's Justin Doe. Let me see here. he offers some courses, but, you know, check this page out. Look him up. He's great. There's the Typography Manual. This is what we're going to go over right now. I want all of you guys to download this right here, and keep this with you, like, throughout every project. You know, and if you have to go back and refer to it, you go back and refer to it. But I'm going to open it up here, and we're going to go through some of these. Flush left. What does that mean? Alignment. Left alignment. You do not want to see things center aligned. It just looks bad, and there becomes like this whole stacking issue when you start putting more text on screen. There are very rare instances where you will center align or right align things. You know, really just always, especially in this class, always left align when it comes to your text. Use one typeface. This one's huge. A lot of you see a lot of designers mixing typeface, and that is because they know the rules already, and they know how to break the rules because they are so good at the rules to begin with that they're comfortable enough moving outside of that. We are not at that point right now. Okay, we are at the point where we just need to focus on making it look good with the one typeface. So don't start mixing typefaces. There's different ways to show hierarchy, right, with one typeface, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Actually, right now. Yeah, exactly. Like his. Sorry, guys. I'm reading the chat at the same time, so if I stop and look over, usually that's what is happening. But yeah, it is annoying when that happens, Sarah. It frustrates me to no end when I have to do that, like for YouTube videos. But one way to show hierarchy, right? And hierarchy is like in order of importance. You know, when you open a magazine page, you're not just all of a sudden reading the meat of the article. You look at the titles and the headings and stuff first, and skip a weight, right? So if we start at a light for the body, then go ahead and go for a bold text, or like, you know, the same typeface but just a bold version of that in order to establish that hierarchy, because we're immediately going to read, and your eyes will automatically go to whatever's thickest and biggest on the page. Here's also a great rule. If you don't know what size to go, double it. Okay, so for instance, let's say that we have a body of text, and that text is at 50 points, or, you know, that's the size of the text, right? 100 should be for the title or for the header. Let's say the header's 100, right? What do you do for the title? 200. Just double it every time, and you cannot go wrong. The 3 to 4 times that he says right here, I would avoid that for this class at the moment, and let's just get down the basics and work really well on making sure that we're understanding that for now it's 2 times the height of the 2 times the size of whatever text you're doing. And then that goes the same for, like, if you've got your title and your title is 150 points, then you're gonna have your header at 75 points. You know, so just simple math right there. Aligning to an axis. What this means is a grid. Grids are extremely, extremely important in design. You want to be able to, like, right, when we're designing something, we are directing the viewer to look at things a certain way. And so not only does hierarchy play an order in that, right? Like, that's one thing that helps us draw our attention to certain things on the screen, but it's also like aligning things to axes. We all know the golden rule, and dividing up your image or your screen in a certain way, you know, especially with photography and stuff, and shooting photos, or like putting things along on those grids in order for things to not look really weird and uncomfortable, right? Because there are some things you're like, I don't know why that feels weird, but something feels off about it. And usually it has something to do with this, right? It has something to do with like either things are not a grid, or maybe the colors are off, or I'm sure you guys have all heard of uncanny valley, when things are so close to being right, but there's just slight things off about it that it makes you feel very uncomfortable. You see that a lot with character design too. Because if you don't get faces and stuff right, then people notice those things right away. We look at faces every single day and everywhere that we look. So, you're programmed to recognize them. And when you see things that don't look like the way they supposed to, it gives you an uneasy feeling. You can intentionally do that at some point, but just not in class, not in this class right now. But that is uncanny valley, and that's why we want to stick to the axis. Pick any typeface. These ones are what he uses, which is great. I'm giving you guys a folder full of approved digital media arts typefaces that we use here at the school. They're all Google fonts, and so I'll show you guys how to download that in a little bit here. I didn't download it on purpose so that you guys could see exactly what needs to be done. But so don't worry about these necessarily so much. But these are good ones for when you guys go outside of the program and you guys are on your own, or when you're doing like personal work and stuff. You guys can look at these different typefaces or fonts. Same word means the same thing. The group by using rules. That one, not so much, we won't really deal with here, but this one's a big one, right? Avoiding corners, edges of the screen. A television or a phone or like a computer screen, right, is essentially, it's a box. We don't want to draw attention to the box. When we're watching things, we want to immerse the viewer as much as we can and draw them into this idea that it's a scene, it's a world. There are times, and we will use some of this in this lesson, where we do put things on the edge, right? It's writing along the edge of the frame, and it's an intentional decision, design decision. But you don't want to like this part of the two. If I were to line this part up right there with the edge of the screen, it looks very weird. And it's that weird, uneasy feeling that you get where you're like, I don't know why they would do that. You want to almost like, at that point, you want to break that plane and move beyond, because what that does is it shows there's something beyond the frame. And so avoid corners of the screen. Let me do this. Sorry, guys. Close that. Avoid corners, and avoid placing things directly on the edges, right? No matter what, even if it's like any corner, I don't care what it is, just like, you don't want to do that. Avoid these areas. And I will show you guys a quick grid to set up inside of After Effects here in a minute. Spacing, minding the gap. This one's also important, like leaving enough space in between blocks of text to give a little bit of breathing room. And that also applies to kerning, right, of type. You don't want necessarily things to be too close together or too far apart, because then you read things differently based on that. This one, I actually don't like seeing italics in class necessarily here, because italics is used in certain situations and in certain processes, but not really, like, you don't really want to have italics on type inside of animation unless there's like a very specific reason for it. So I would just avoid the italic. You can use the bold. Let's just have fun with the bold text. And sometimes you'll use regular. I mean, I just think this is kind of an obsolete rule in my opinion, but remember, if you're using regular, you want to go above that for like to draw attention, because remember, this is going to draw someone's attention. Usually I'll use regular if like for some reason the thin type isn't as legible, considering whatever your background is, or you know, if you're putting typography onto footage, it can be very busy, and so there's ways to help it stand out. So I want you guys to read through this. This is for you guys to keep it forever. It'll apply all the time. And then here is just the this right here is just the video version of that. So if you don't want to, I don't want to play it because I'll get struck through like YouTube copyright stuff. So I'm not going to play it right now, but go ahead and play that if you guys don't want to just look through the manual. But it's good to have both resources. This section right here, allowed fonts through the program. This is all you will be using. The biggest thing, no script fonts and no handwriting fonts. They distract, you know, they're for different reasons, again, that we won't be working with in this class. Generally, like for, you know, script is more for making things look old and stuff. Like if it were part of an image design, sure. But when you're trying to read script on screen when it's moving, like let alone when it's not moving, and then if you add the movement on top of it, people are just like, I don't know what to be looking at here. You know, so no script fonts. I'll go ahead and download this real quick. And then we'll move a little bit into the next steps. Here, this video right here, you guys can watch in case you forget how to install the fonts. This is another quick video that shows you how to do that. Animating typography, this is just kind of what we're going to be talking through today. So if you guys want to get a bit ahead, right, for next class, you can always watch any of these other videos that I'll be going over. And a good one, like, why is my render taking too long? So these are just extra videos you guys can go through and watch, or you can hang around here and watch this. The deliverables, you know, I'll go through and talk more about these once we kind of get to them, but just make sure you're reading that. Make sure that you're getting things in appropriately sized, 1920 by 1080, right? Like one single MP4. I don't want a bunch of different videos. You know, that's a whole part of this class, is being able to follow through on that kind of stuff. So no abstract shapes, representational imagery, none of that stuff. We're just focusing on type this week. So all right, you guys, so I did set up a Miro board here. And all you guys have actually access to this on the home page. I believe I have it on here. Yeah. So if you guys click this, it'll take you here. Let me just double check that it works. Okay, perfect. And this is just one where I'm giving you guys some tips and tricks about typography and how we're going to use them inside of After Effects and with animation. So disqualifiers, bad font choice right off the bat, incorrect alignment, not legible. If those three things happen, then you're going to get feedback on it. You know, the closer you can get to right the first place, the less you have to change later on. So that's something to think about, right? So always make sure, you know, put in your notes when it comes to type and fonts. Make sure it's a good, let's change this, make it a little more positive, right? Well, no, it's the disqualifiers. So bad, this is bad, don't do it. Bad font choice, incorrect alignment, always go left align, and not legible. There's a list of the approved fonts within Canvas. Use this for all of your projects moving forward. They're all Google fonts. The biggest thing here is, right, let the images do the talking. We don't want to add a ton of text or descriptors to our videos, because when we get further into class, you don't want people just reading a bunch of text on screen. If we did that, we'd read an article or a book, right? Like, you want to, there are going to be instances at some point when you do have to add things like Companies will make you add disclaimers, right? Like the end of the medication commercials when they're like, side effects include, and then there's like all that scrolling text at the bottom. Yeah, no, does anyone read that? No, like people don't have time. They go to the website to read that kind of stuff. But for legal purposes, they put those in there. But for us, right, what we're doing, we want to, our imagery is powerful. It's what Cro-Magnon people use when they, first started putting things. We didn't first write, we first drew. So images first, just something to think moving forward, not paragraphs of text, right? The difference between serif and sans serif. What are these? Serif fonts have the little foot at the bottom, and that is what they're called. Like Times New Roman, right? Like if I start writing here and I select, I think this one is a sans serif. Like if I just write my name, yes. You can see here that there are little feet, tiny little feet, right at the bottom of these. This little tiny little dash mark. Those are serifs. Usually we use fonts with serifs when we're trying to like pass across the idea that something is older. You don't see a lot of these fonts nowadays, especially in modern things, right? Some people will do that, but in general, it means like it's meant to convey age of something. Text, documents, things like that. We'll use the serif type fonts. Sans serif is used to display things that are newer or portray things that feel new and modern. Helvetica is probably the most widely known one. Roboto is another one that a lot of people use. Sans in front of here, just if you guys need to remember, it's French for without. So sans serif, without the serif. Motion typography rules. These are now what we're starting to get into for the motion, right? Before we're talking about design, now we're getting into the motion part. Movement of the type and animating it. Readability. Again, I can't stress this enough. Make sure you can read it out loud. Make sure it's on the screen long enough, but not too short, and not too short, but also not super long, right? Like I don't want to watch a 30-second video of just one text on there. Usually, you're going to see that text has to be, depending on how long it is, if it's only, let's say if it's like 10 words, right? You probably need it on screen for like a max of 4 seconds, maximum, depending. Like you're going to sit there and feel it. Like if you're sitting and watching it, you're like, well, this is taking forever, then it's probably too long. And if you sit there and watch it and you're like, wait, what'd that say? Then it's probably too short. My suggestion is have someone in the house read it, or, right, just throw it into Slack real quick and be like, hey, you guys, can you read this? Let me know if this is legible, or like if I should slow it down or something, using each other, bouncing ideas like I was talking about earlier. Following the grid, especially when it comes to movement, right? We do not want any diagonal motion of text. Like you're never going to move text from the upper right corner to the bottom left corner of the screen or vice versa. It's never going to happen that way. You're always going to move text either up to down or left to right or down to up or right to left. Like that is the only way. Like that is the only way it should go. Diagonal text would be very odd. Unless intentionally designed. And I say that every time, but the people who do that are like serious designers. Like I don't even do that, okay? Because I am not that good with text where I can break the rules in that sort of way. So if I can't do it, you guys can't do it. That's a rule, and I make the rules. I'm the teach. So another thing, don't animate text over top of other text. I see this a lot. It comes down to like which one's moving at certain times, and then also making sure that your layers are in the correct order. But essentially we don't want, like if something, like if a line of text comes down and it goes to a stop, you don't want to see more text go over it. You'd probably want to bring the text up to there or bring the other text over to here, but never crossing paths with each other. You don't ever want to do that. That just looks very weird. And it's just like, I don't know why they did that. People who aren't versed in design will pick that stuff out too. Alignment, always left align. Again, use one typeface or font, not multiples. And here's the big one. This one kind of gets a lot of students as well. Do not squash or stretch the type. In After Effects, you have the ability to scale. You can scale in different directions, right? Because we work in 2 axes. We work X and Y. Don't do that. Just when you're changing type, always change the size through the font size. You know, we'll talk about scaling text and stuff, but you don't ever want to squish things unnecessarily or stretch them out. People who know text will immediately pick that out as well and will wonder why you made that choice. So these are the rules. You should probably have these up, you know, at some point. You guys are all welcome to look at this Miro board that I have here, and I'll probably add some more notes throughout the semester for you guys. In fact, maybe this weekend I'll go through and add some notes about the stuff we've already spoken about and some of these rules, and maybe I'll make a list for shortcuts. In fact, let me just do this real quick right now. Although you guys should do this on your own and have it with you because you might not have access to this at some point, right? Let's see, After Effects shortcuts. And we will, all right, we're going to select all of this. Hierarchy time, let's bold everything. Let's change the size. That is exceptionally large. I'm just going to do 30. I like quick, easy numbers. And then I will add to that as we go through the class. And then I will also, I think I can duplicate by control dragging. Yeah. Notice the grid that keeps popping up on here, right? Same idea. You see it all over the place. And this will be C40 shortcuts. C money. Let me see. Cinema 4D. There we go. I'll add those in. So just keep track of this board when you guys ever have questions. All right, let's move on from this stuff. And we'll close this out. Let's learn how to download the fonts. The first thing that I did, I downloaded it a second ago from the modules page. And I'm going to navigate over to the downloads. For those of you who don't understand how to unzip a file, right? If you see that here, there's a little zipper up there, that is a zip file. I don't want to just assume everyone knows how to do this, so I want to run through it. You're going to right click there and you're going to extract all. It's going to ask you where you want it to live. It's always automatically going to try and put it where the original file is. So I just hit extract, and then it just takes a second. And then I'll delete the zip file. You guys can actually put that to your Google Drive if you need to. That's linked to your student account because that has unlimited storage on there. So I'm going to open that up, and we have a ton, like an absolute ton of fonts here to use, which is great. They're all Google fonts again, so if you guys needed to find them, you can always find them there. Instead of like going through, because how many, there's like, it says here, there's 256 different font items. So you guys have choices, right? There's plenty to choose from here. Even though each one is like a separate little line here, and it's not grouped by family, which is okay. Some fonts that you'll download will be grouped by their family, but in this case, it's not. You just select all of them, and you right click. By the way, I selected all by hitting Control A, right click, and install, and that's going to install all of them. I already have this installed, so I'm going to hit no, I don't want to replace it. And I'm just going to let those kind of run. And while those are running, does anyone have any questions or anything on the live stream right now? While I'm doing that, oh, the one thing about this is you want to install these fonts before you open up After Effects. I know that for a second there I thought if you installed these while After Effects was open, you wouldn't have any issues, but you do end up having issues. They won't show up in your font list. So like if After Effects is open, just close it and then install the fonts and relaunch it, and you won't have any issues then. It'll show up at that point. So all right, so let's go ahead and we are going to run through like a quick tutorial on animating the font or animating text. Let's see here. Okay, so I have already created a file, which I haven't shared with you guys. I am actually going to just kind of walk you guys through again how to, you know, open a new file. So you're going to click on your After Effects. I always love these images that show up. Everyone's cool designs. New project, right? Click on that. And then the first thing you want to do is you want to go File, Save As, and then you'll navigate to the file you want it to be. And then you're going to name it Typography. You know, that's a great name for this because we're going to have multiple compositions in this project. And you can work on it throughout this week. But remember your name. So I'll put Makara. _ typography, and then save it automatically. Let me just, you know, walk through that is how you save a new file. I'm actually going to go to the one that I had pre-prepared for you guys so we can kind of work a little bit faster through it. After Effects. No, don't do that. Right there. Okay, I have something set up here, but let's talk about some other things first. The first thing that we want to do is create a new composition. Again, the shortcut for that is Control-N or Command-N if you're on a Mac. I don't think anyone is on a Mac for this class, though. If you guys are, let me know, because I'm curious as what kind of Mac you're working on, and then how it ends up running, because when I was in the program a while back, I used a Mac, and the only time I had issues was running Cinema 4D. It worked really well with the Adobe products, but Cinema 4D was a nightmare on it, so I'm curious how that works. But we're going to go ahead and name this composition. I'll put it testing. Making sure it's 1920 by 1080. All my parameters are correct. 1920, 1080. Don't touch the square pixels. The aspect ratio is locked here. 24 frames a second. I have 10 seconds. I am actually going to take that and cut it down to 7 seconds. Duration time. I'm going to open that up. A couple things you guys will not see. So yours will open up like this. When you see the checkered background, I want to run through some of these too. It means that there is no background. That is going to render out blank area. It'll look black. So you always want to make sure you add a background to your composition, unless you're intentionally wanting it to not have a background. The other thing that was on here when I first opened this up was the grid that we're going to be using. What is that grid, right? It's called a title action safe. And that, you turn that on by hitting this little tiny button right here. And this will essentially turn any kind of guide or grid on that you want to work with. You know, in general, this one is the best one that we're going to be working with, the title action save. You can also stack these on top of each other. Proportional grid right here looks more like that golden or the rule of thirds that we were talking about. Not the golden rule, but rule of thirds. But we're not going to use that. We're going to use the title action save. And why does it look like it's kind of divided up into these odd shapes, right? This is because of how televisions used to be shaped versus how they are shaped right now. You know, the old TVs used to be more of a box, right? Their aspect ratio was a 4:3. So this is if you were going to make one for essentially like an old television or something that is in that aspect ratio. And then as TVs evolved, their aspect ratios evolved, and now we have since then moved into an elongated format of television. And the reason we do that, why we go this way, not vertical, has to do with our peripheral vision. And we just have like a wider view this way than we do this way, right? And it's all based on evolution. Like in the wild, being hunted, like you want to be able to see further out this way because most of your predators would be coming from the side somewhere, turning your head, and you can see that way. And so that is the reason that the aspect ratio in our grid is shaped like that. The little crosshair in the middle is just the middle of the composition. And these little hatch marks right here are just marking the center point of both your vertical and your horizontal axis. So, you know, turning these on is always a great idea. I work with this all the time. My title action safe is generally something I have in every composition. It will not render out. I will repeat this. It does not render out in your videos. It is something that you just use as a guide, right? It's like rulers or something inside of After Effects, or I'm sorry, inside of Illustrator. So that is one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. Another thing that I wanted to touch base on is, let me see here, I have some notes. Compositions, right? Okay, so a little bit kind of about playback and a little more in depth about layers. I just had this solid up in my project panel. It is just a background. It's just I'm going to rename that. I just drag and dropped it into the composition. This is a good example of a lot of students get stuck in this spot too. I dragged this solid down into my composition and I double clicked it and it brought me here. It does not mean that things are ruined. It just means that you've like essentially secluded that specific item, whatever you double clicked on. And so you just go up here to this area and it's just like selected on the layer specifically. You're just going to hit X and you'll go back to your composition. So you'll just click right there and that goes away. You can just close that out. And again, that's what happens if you accidentally double click on a layer. That will happen constantly because you usually rename things. But I will select that layer. I'm going to hit, see? I've got butterfingers today. I will not keep doing that. I promise to you guys. I just want to rename it. Single click. Oh, come on. There we go. Hitting enter. Return, enter. Single click and hit return and you can rename it. I'm going to change this to background just so I know what it is. And then every time you add in a background, you should lock it. Right, this little box right here, make sure you tick it off, and that way you don't move this background around when you're trying to animate other things. And so we are going to this layer is, or this composition is set at it's set at 7 seconds. Let's say we have text on screen, right? I'll put my name. Let me do this here. Change the size of it. Roboto is is the font I will be using today. Use a different font than what I use. because Roboto is just something that's kind of standard. I'd like to see some more interesting typefaces from that list if you guys want to. So, you know, have fun looking through that. But let's say you open your composition and you see your layer here. Let me change the color of it so you guys can see it a little bit easier. I'll change it to yellow. It like gets cut off here, right? What does that mean? It just means that that layer just doesn't stretch across the entire timeline. And so in order to change that, right, sometimes you want to make the layer shorter. Sometimes you want to make it longer. You select that layer and you move your playhead to wherever you want it to be. And then you hit Control bracket. Oh, Control. No, what did I do? Oh, tilde. There we go. Again, select the layer, move the playhead to where you want it, and Control and bracket if you're going to do that for me. Alt, I'm sorry. Alt, not Control. That's why it wasn't working. Alt and bracket. And then if you want to shorten it, move your playhead, Alt, beginning bracket. And so those look like this. T. This one or this one. This one will those will trim your it'll trim your layer. So we don't want that though. We want it to stretch across the entire thing, because if it's not across the entire thing, once you move off of that, it doesn't show up anymore because it doesn't exist in that space. Another thing that you're going to see here, and a lot of students end up doing, is they have this, right? This is essentially your render preview, your working area, right? It's when you open up your composition, it automatically expands across the entire timeline. But let's say you have a really complex animation that takes a lot of time to render, and so playing it back over and over, or a specific section of your animation you want to focus on, and you just want to play that section on repeat really quick without playing the whole 3-minute animation, right? You will just move these little end and beginning bracket points, and there is a shortcut to that. To make it begin, you hit B, and the end you would go here and you hit N. N is in Nancy. And then let's say I wanted it to the beginning again. I'll go to the beginning, scrub to the end, hit E, or I'm sorry, N, and there you have it. And one other thing I noticed students end up doing is that they end up working in a zoomed view. And so they think they're working alongside the guide, but, you know, because this is all they see. But they're actually not. They're actually working in just a zoomed in area. And so they think, oh, like I'm working up here, or it's a lot smaller. Like, I got to make my text smaller so that it fits in here and looks nicer, right? Well, that is... that is not what happens. It actually means you're zoomed in, and you can tell by down in the bottom here of your stage, it has a percentage, and it will tell you whether you are in the full, like fully scaled into it or not. Like if I click on this and I hit fit, right, it shows me my entire screen. So whenever you're designing things and laying things out, go ahead and do that. And then when you need to get down into really specific points, you can hit the Control plus or minus, and that will zoom you into those areas. But we definitely want to make sure we're fit up to 100%, and that will make sure that you're seeing your entire frame and not just a zoomed view, because this 100%, that means that this is how zoomed in it is, compared to like how it would be on a screen, right? It would fit across my entire screen. So just make sure you're working in a full like the fit view and not zoomed in on that, because then you'll render, and what you'll notice is there's black bars at the top and the bottom or on the sides. I'm sure we'll come into that a couple times this semester, so just something to be aware of. And I think that is all for that that area. Let's talk a little bit about keyframes. In easing, kind of just want to give you guys a little preview of what you're going to read in that article. So default keyframes inside of After Effects end up being linear. Linear keyframes, I'm just going to type something in. Perfect. Let's keyframe the position of this. P here. Move here. I will keyframe again. Move the value. All right, right? The movement is linear, which means it's continuous. It never slows down or speeds up, right? We were talking about that when it came to the ball, like considering gravity and inertia and different aspects of physics when you're animating. Well, easing those keyframes is the process of essentially applying like that inertia or the speed, like changing the speed of things. I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit in the past, but it's going to be something that you guys need to drill into your heads because it's so important. Again, the linear keyframes are bad. We do not want to see them. When you see a linear keyframe in After Effects, it shows up as a little diamond inside of your dope sheet. You see this little diamond here. That is a linear keyframe. Let me do this here. Linear keyframe right there. As soon as you ease something, as soon as you ease it, it will look like a little hourglass. So that is how you know your keyframes are eased. Just generally eased. We will go into more depth on how to kind of like customize that type of easing and stuff. But that is something you will see. If you see the diamonds, that's not a good thing. All right, let us move to, we are going to start the type part right now. So we've got an hour left. I'm going to try and get through the easing and the fade. We might get to the contact information and we might not. But I have pre-prepared this composition here for you right now at the moment. I'm just going to slide this over. And this is what we're going to be creating this week. Good, better, best. Notice the hierarchy on it. Notice that it's legible, right? You can sit here and you can read it. It's on for a few seconds and then it moves off. Well, not only that, but the movement is nice and smooth coming in. And then as it goes out, it speeds up into the out position. And so this is what we're going to be creating. We're going to be using the grid. And so I'm going to create a new composition. Let me see here. I'm going to delete that one. Actually, I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to rename this one. Well, easing, good, better, best. Another way, that's just another way in the project panel that you can rename your files, but you do have to select and hit the enter or return button in order to do that. If you just double click it, it just opens it up. So I just had the same composition that had just opened and created, because it's going to apply to this as well. So 7 seconds, 1920, 1080, 24 frames a second, and we are golden. The title action safe is on. Good to know. And so now let's add our text, right? I am going to select the text tool up at the top, and I am just going to click in here and I'm going to write good. In fact, let's like all caps this so I can tell the difference between this and the other. I want to make sure my font is an approved font, right? But I am going to select the light version of this font because we want to show that hierarchy. And then I'm going to change this to, let's see. Actually, let's keep it at 50. Actually, no, let's do 100. Gosh, that's going to end up real big. No, let's stick to the 50 for now. You know, it seems to be a little bit hard to see, so legibility is an issue at that point, so I'll actually do 75. This happens, you'll see this when you have your caps locks on. So you just hit your caps lock and it will go away. So I don't know what it is. It's just some weird thing inside of After Effects that happens. Make sure up here that your settings, right? We don't want any additional line spacing. We don't want any additional kerning at the moment. Make sure it's not stretched or like stretched or squashed, right? Don't want any squashing or stretching. Everything should be 100, 0, or auto in this area, except for your font size. The other thing you want to do is you want to go to your align panel right here and make sure that it is left aligned. Actually, wrong. You go to your character panel and make sure that the font is actually left aligned. There's two different alignments, right? There's a font alignment with your paragraph, the paragraph alignment, and then there's the aligning objects inside of After Effects, inside of your screen or the space. And so right now we want to make sure that it is left aligned and not right aligned. So I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to hit V, my shortcut V for my selection tool. And then I am going to take this. Oh, that's what we don't want to do. And I'm going to zoom in here. And if you, you can mouse scroll zoom as well. But if you hold down the space bar, it'll give you this little hand. And that little hand allows you to navigate around your screen, especially when you are zoomed in, right? Because I need to zoom in nice and tight here and kind of frame this up so that I can move this anchor point to the bottom corner, because that is where we're going to be moving the text from. So I'm going to hit Y, which is the anchor point tool right up there. And I'm going to just click this and I'm going to drag it right down into here. And then I'm going to scroll out so that I can see my screen. And then I'm going to hit the selection tool again, V. V is for Victor. And then I'm going to take this layer right here. I'm going to change the color so you guys can see. Mine defaults to black, and I will change that for next class. But I'm going to hit Control D, which duplicates the layer. Copy and paste. Copy and paste works too, but Control D is to duplicate. If you duplicate it, it duplicates all of the parameters that you might have animated on there as well. So I hit Control D, and I'm going to rename this one Better. Ooh. And then I'm going to duplicate it again, and I'm going to, again, the caps lock was on, and I'm going to change the word to best. I just wanted them all to be fully capital. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reorder this, right? Because I want the word best to be on the bottom, better to be in the middle, and good to be on the top. And I'm just going to kind of solo this layer here, the better. What that means is it's just focusing in on that point. It didn't get rid of the rest of the stuff. It didn't hide it. It's just making it so that you can focus in specifically on that area. You can solo multiple things, right? So if I soloed my background still shows up. But it's just this little dot here. And so this just allows me to focus on this section of the text. And right, so I'm at 75, so I'm going to double that. And what's nice about After Effects is I think you can just write ×2. You can divide, multiply, add, or subtract within any of the value boxes or value areas, and it automatically does the math for you. So if you're not good at math or you don't feel confident in it, you can just do things that way, and it works for like all of your transform properties and everything. So I doubled that text, and then I am going to I think I'm going to keep that one light as well. I'm going to actually do the regular for this one. Let's see how it looks like that, right? So not only did I double the height of the text, but then I bolded it a little to add hierarchy. And then I'm going to unsolo this, and I'm going to select the layer and hit P for position. I'm just going to kind of drag this down a little bit. We'll line everything up in a second here. And then I'm going to solo in here on best. And I am going to select that, and I'm going to take 150. Well, 150 times 2 is 300, so I'm just going to type in 300. And then I'm going to select bold. And so this is because this is the best one. This is the one we want everyone to really be looking at, right? So I'm going to unsolo this layer. And I'm going to save my work, and then I'm going to select V or hit V for the selection tool. And I'm going to select my best layer and hit P for position and just kind of drop this down a little bit so that things aren't stacked on top of each other. And I'm going to zoom in to my scene, and I'm going to hit Y, and I'm going to just move this as best I can to this bottom little square, the bottom left square here. Then I'm going to do the same for better. I'm going to select that layer. I'm just going to take that anchor point and just kind of bring it right over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to line these, this type up with the grid, right? So I'm going to select all of my layers at once, holding down Shift. So you select the bottom one, hold down Shift, and click the top one. And then over here, that align panel that I was talking about, we're going to line it via, not that one, via this panel right here, the align panel. Now, there's two different ways that it will align things, either to a selection or to a composition. The selection is if you have multiple things selected, it will center them or align them based on each other, right? So if you have like all these texts and I hit the left align, which I'm going to here in a second, it's going to line all of the text up to there. If you have it to center or to align to the composition, it will align it to the actual composition that you're working in. So there's different uses there. But right now I just really want to make sure that the text is all lined up together. So I will hit that center, the align left button right there. And then I'm going to hit P while they're still all selected so that it brings up all the parameters. And I'm just going to take my Y value and bring it down here so that it's resting nicely up against the bottom. And I think that I'm going to bring this slightly over so that it's on the second line right here. You know, and just line those up best you can. I'm not going to nitpick it. I'll be able to see if it's on the grid right away. I'm not going to be a stickler on like, show me that it's aligned fully. You know, I'll be able to see it. I'm going to zoom out here so you guys can kind of see how that looks. All right. And so our layers are all reordered. We aligned everything. We distributed them. That's another thing, right? We want to make sure that the space, negative space, another thing you guys learn in design class, is just as important as the objects themselves. And so you want to make sure kind of that these are all distributed evenly from each other. Now, distribution in After Effects works based on where your anchor point is. So all of my anchor points are in the bottom left corner of all of my text, right? So if I select all of these and go to distribute vertically, watch what happens. It all of a sudden brings us, it doesn't actually distribute like the space in between the words because my anchor points aren't centered in the middle of the text. And so in this case, when it is like that, when your anchor point isn't centered on your object, you just want to kind of visually space them out from each other. You can also do it using math, right? Like this is our, we want to change the y-axis, right? So let's change this to 975. So it's just an even number. And then we'll put here 975 minus 100. We need to do it more because it brought it further down. So we'll do 975 minus 200. And we'll keep going. 975 minus 250. What's the sweet spot? Well, I think it'll be 300. Sometimes it takes this. If you want to do it specifically this way, I did that wrong. 975 minus 300. I just sent it way off screen. Yeah, that's not bad. And then so you can do 675. Well, minus 300 would be 375. I don't like that, actually. I kind of like it the way it was. I had visually done it a little bit better, so I'm just going to move it back. you can do the math. I'm a little tired. I don't want to do the math at this point anymore, so I'm not going to. But visually, everything's spaced. And so our next step is to animate, right? We've got our layout here. We've got the grid going. The one thing we want to do is something called animating backwards. What is that, right? Let's see. Animating backwards. You will see a lot of animators do this, and it means that we want to work from the point at which we want the frame to be at, right? So this is where we want the text to end up at when we're gonna, because we're gonna move it from off screen to on screen, right? And so this is where we want it to stop before we move it again. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move the playhead up to, I think, 1 second here, and I am going to first right click on all of these and separate the dimensions, because in this case we are only moving the X value. We're not going to be moving the right or the Y value. Separate dimensions. And then we're going to just place a keyframe on all of the X positions. And then here's a good shortcut to add to your glossary. You select all the layers and you hit U. What does that do? It only shows you the keyframes, it only shows you the properties that are actually keyframed, and it kind of gets rid of all that other stuff. Because if you start unscrolling each layer, you're going to notice that there is a lot going on in each one of them. And so this just kind of keeps it cleaned up and organized for you. And we're going to save real quick. Control S, save your work. And then we want it to be on screen for at least like 3 seconds, right? In fact, I'm going to move these keyframes. I'm going to select them all. Remember, drag from off of them. Don't just like click on them. Drag from off of them, grab them, and move them ahead. I think I'm going to put it at 2 seconds here. I think that will be better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to 5 seconds. And I'm going to add keyframes again here. I want it to be in the same position, because between the 2 and the 5 seconds, for 3 seconds here, I do not want my text moving. I want it in the same spot. And so the keyframes have to be the same if you're going to do that. Normally you would think you can Control C, Control V. But for some weird reason, and they haven't fixed it, and it drives me nuts, and it probably drives every animator nuts, they haven't changed that. It just copies the layers, and we don't want that. We want to copy just the keyframes. So you can just select each one. You can, select each one and hit Control C, Control V that way. There are some scripts that also can do this for you automatically, which is quicker, but I want to teach you guys the way that you get it like After Effects right out of the box, right? And so we can do that, either select it, Control C, Control V, or you can come over here, and in this little area it just says like there's a keyframe, to add a keyframe. You just click that and it will add it at whatever position your property is at, or whatever coordinates your property is at. So if I click that and click that, it adds all the same keyframes. Another way I can do it is even quicker, is if I select all of the keyframes and I hit that one button, and it automatically does that. So 3 different ways you guys can learn to do that. And then if I'm scroll back to the beginning and I hit play, it doesn't do anything, right? Because we're gonna work backwards. So we've got this area where we want 2 seconds of this to be just on screen so we can read it. We're going to scrub back here to the 12th frame, so half a second. And then we're going to move everything off screen. We want to start from off screen on the left side, move the text in to the resting position, let it sit, and then move the text out onto the right side. And so what we're going to do is we are going to select our layer, and we are just going to move that back. Now you can either enter in a specific value here, or you can grab this and you can drag it this way, right? Which can, this can pose some kind of annoyances when you do it this way. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Whatever you prefer to work is fine. You can also select the layer and grab this and move it. But if you are going to do that, right, we want it on the same Y value. So we're going to hold down shift before we do that. So you're going to shift, click, and drag. Or you're going to click, move it. You can move it and then you'll hold shift and then you can drag. And then it's just recording that movement down there. So we have keyframes. So now the movement goes into the resting position, sits for a minute, and nothing after. So then we're going to go to 12 frames prior to 7 seconds, right? 6 seconds, 12th frame. And we are going to then move all of the objects off screen. So I am going to, let me see if I can do this. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to click. Ooh, no. I'm going to click and I'm going to try dragging them that way. It doesn't work. No, really? Click and drag. Okay, it does work. Just make sure you grab the object specifically, hold down shift, and then you can drag it. Okay? So then, play. All right, comes back, it comes on, goes off. Why is this crappy? Right? This is just not, it doesn't look good. Reason being linear keyframes. There is no deceleration into place. Right here it should be decelerating into the spot and then accelerating away. And so we want to do that on our own. So what we're going to do is we are going to save our work, and we're going to select all of these keyframes, click and drag, and we're going to go to the graph editor here. And notice that we only have our X value on screen. That's great. We want to select, we've got all of the keyframes selected at this point. I just wanted you guys to be able to see all of the lines, the X lines compared to each other on the graph. So I'm going to click off here, and I'm going to select the good position. And then I'm going to just kind of drag and select these first two keyframes. And down here in the lower right hand corner are the easing buttons, right? This one is easy ease. So that's going to both ease in and ease out. That's this one right here. It looks like a full hill, right? This one right here looks like it's going up the hill. That's easing into a keyframe. And this one here is easing out. And you'll kind of explain, you'll understand the shapes of them here in just a second. So I'm going to drag, select these two, the first and the second keyframe. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit easy ease. And then I'm going to drag over the third and the fourth keyframe. Come on. Whoop. There we go. And I'm going to hit easy ease again. Then I'm going to do that to all of these. Layers. Select your layer. Select your first two keyframes. Easy ease. We're going to select the last two keyframes. Easy ease. Then we're going to move to best. Make sure you don't just select the layer, but you actually select the parameter of the layer. Drag. Ease. Drag. Select both. Don't be like me. And then ease that. Okay. I'm going to save that. Can you see that little box popping up? That's just me in the habit of saving things. So I'm going to go back to the X position of good. And I am going to select this first keyframe. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to slowly move into, I wanted to decelerate into its resting position, right? So I'm going to take this Bezier handle right here, and I'm going to drag it up. And I think I'm going to bring it kind of halfway in between the 0 and the 500 here. So that makes this nice smooth arch right here. You don't want to, remember last time I talked about overshooting, right? You don't want this arc to go over this keyframe, your second keyframe, because that's what causes overshoot. It's a cool thing, but right now we're not working with it. We'll work with it a little later in the semester. And then I'm going to take this second keyframe here. I'm going to take this Bezier handle. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to drag it in closer to the actual keyframe. And what that does is it kind of smooths this curve out, right? It's not so drastic. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to do that to the better position. I'm going to select the first keyframe. I am going to drag that up between the 500 and the 0 as like a reference point, right? And then I'm going to take this one and select this second keyframe. And I'm actually going to leave it here. I'm not going to take this Bezier handle and drag it in, right? Because we want to show the difference between what good easing looks like, what better easing looks like, and what best easing looks like. And so this is having this curve a little bit more drastic here. That's a better look, right? And so then we're going to select the X position for best. We're going to select this first keyframe. It is already eased. We're just going to drag that up, same position here between the 0 and the 500. But then we're going to take this and we want to really exaggerate this curve, right? We want it to really kind of come in nice and smooth to nice slow stop. It's almost like thinking of coming to a stop at a stoplight if you drive. You don't want to just drive up and slam on your brakes, right? That's just, no one in your car is going to like you if you do that. You want to ease into the stop. You want to like slowly break into the stop. And that's kind of what we're doing here, right? It's almost like we're driving fast, we're slowing down, we're stopped. And so we're going to take this, select that keyframe, we're going to grab that Bezier handle, and we're going to exaggerate that a little bit, right? So it's a nice, smooth, slow over time, a nice, steady over time stop. And then we're going to move back up to the X position, and I'm just going to kind of play this so you guys can see what I mean. It slowly goes into there. In fact, I think that maybe one of them is slightly overshooting. No? Yeah, this better looks like it's got a slight overshoot. Let me see here. Yeah, you can see because it kind of like goes forward and then it rests back into a spot. It still looks good. You kind of have to have a trained eye like to see how subtle that is, but I can see it. So I'm going to just select here, and you can just kind of see where it's very slightly lifting over that. I'm just going to select this first keyframe, and I'm just going to drag it down just slightly, just so it doesn't get that overshoot. And that's usually the reason. This one can go, like you can drag this up like this. So, you know, you just got to look at the curve and just kind of determine where that overshoot is happening. There we go. That's nice and easy. Let me try it again. Nice. All right. And so that is the easing into position. Now let's ease out of the position, right? We want it to come from the stop. And instead of like going at like kind of a steadier pace, like a little bit of speeding up and then slowing back down real quick, we want to go fast. We want to shoot off screen. Like we slam that gas pedal off that stoplight and we're going. Sweet, Sarah, I'm happy that you saw. I think you're the only one hanging in with me today, but we're doing it together, okay? So we want to do the opposite here, right? We want it to speed up really quickly. So what you're going to see when you're like slowing things down, this arch is going to be almost like a very dramatic hill walking up a hill. Now, as when we're easing out of something and we want it to go fast, it's almost going to look like a skateboard, like a skate ramp. So it's going to be this big like arcing dip or like half of a U shape. And so we're going to kind of work opposite, right? We started with the first one, then we went to the second. We're going to kind of do the same here, but backwards, right? We're going to select the last keyframe. We're going to drag this one down instead. We're going to bring it between the, because for consistency, between the 1500 and 1000. Your numbers might be a little bit different here depending on where your text is in space as far as the position goes. And we're going to select I was on the better text, but I'm going to select the good. Do the same thing here. Select that, drag it down. Pump and iron. Yeah, see, we're the cool ones here. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it. And then we're going to select the last layer best, and we're going to do the same thing here. Drag that down. And then we'll work backwards because we're already on best, so we want that the most dramatic curve, right? So we're going to drag and select, We're going to click on that Bezier handle and we're going to start moving, and we're going to hold down Shift so that it moves straight. And we're going to drag that out pretty far here. And then we're going to select the X position of better, drag to select, grab that Bezier handle, drag that out, and actually I'm going to keep that probably right here. I was here last time. I'm going to right there. And then good. Select the good X position, drag and select, hold down Shift, and we're going to go in. I'm not going to go in all the way because it it makes it look too chunky. That would look too chunky because it's not a smooth curve at that point coming out of the keyframe. So we would just kind of want to move it like to right about there. That should be good. And then I will go back and I will play the animation. You're going to see when it starts to move, when it's moving out of that second keyframe or the third keyframe, it's going to go fast all of a sudden. And we're going to adjust these here in a second. Notice how the best takes a second to get going, but then all of a sudden it's off to the race, like it's gone. And remember, they all meet at the same spot because they're in the same place on the timeline. But, you know, this is a way that we can control speed without, you know, adjusting time. Because remember what I was saying last class, time stays still on your timeline. Like, you cannot change that. Whatever your time is there, that is what it is. You cannot make time go faster or slower on this, but you can make the objects move faster or slower by easing. And so this is something you can apply this to shapes, right? These are not like, essentially that's all text is it's shapes. So if you think about this and you apply it to triangles, squares, circles, a character, a car, any of that, right? Like if you imagine this as a car right now, you know, maybe that's a little bit of a better analogy as far as like stopping at the light and as far as what easing is, right? But it applies everywhere. And so that is easing of the good, better, best. And we're right on time to move to the next section, which is going to be the fade. Woohoo! So I kind of have it pre-set up here. Again, make sure you put the background in. Adding that solid, right-click New, Solid. You can pick your color. Label it background. I'll cancel here because I already have this, but I will rename this here. off to my fun techniques again. One select and then enter. And then it's already named background. And so I have this text pre-written on screen. And let me see here. Okay. Disregard what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of, okay, here. All right. So fading of text, right? Essentially all fading is in all of animation is just changing the opacity from fully opaque to transparent. Makes it disappear. When it's at zero transparency, it's gone. It's not there. The layer's there, the shape is there, but you just can't see it. You know, it's ghosted. And when it's 100%, it's fully opaque and it's, you know, the boldest it will be. And so I've got these sentences written out. Now, when I did write them, when I type them out, let me see here. Let me pick a normal size, 75. I typed these ones out. I hit enter and then typed out the second part of the line, right? There's a couple things you can do when you want your type to like fit in a specific space. You can draw a text box, right? So if you have the text tool selected at the top, you can click and drag, and that will create a text box so that anything you type within there and it runs around it, you know, the spillover brings it to the next line. I just want you guys to make sure that when you're looking at the spacing in between your lines, it says auto compared to what the text is. Don't change that unless for some reason the text that you have picked out is kind of like touching each other at the top and the bottom. If that is the case, you can like adjust it a little bit. My rule that I use is just take whatever the size of the font is and add 5 to 10 points or pixels, right? So if I wanted to change this one, like if they were touching, I do 85, and that's not too bad. And then maybe I want to add an extra 5 on there, so it's 15 more, so I'll go to 90. That's a little bit better, like a little more spaced out, right? So just a quick tip for you guys there. And then if you don't draw the text box, you'll just have to type and then hit enter and then type a little bit more. So a couple different techniques there that you can use as far as kind of how the type or the text tool actually works. But I've got these 2 sentences typed out. Typography can be faded per letter, and typography can be faded per word. There's nothing on this. If I hit U, there's no keyframes. Nothing's been animated yet on this on these sentences. But there is. Let me see here. We're gonna add the fade on, not by hitting T and doing. Oh, I don't know what I did there. Sorry, I was selected on a different program. We're not going to do it by hitting T and changing this opacity or keyframing this opacity. We don't want to do that. Not with this. There's quicker and easier ways to do that, and kind of like an automated way to do that using effects, like an effect in After Effects. So we're going to go over to the Effects and Presets panel right here. And we're going to open it up. And then you see a bunch of stuff, but we want to go right up to the top where it's starred and hit Animation Presets. And so we're going to unfurl that that folder, and then we're going to go over to text and we're going to unfurl that. I want to zoom in here because I don't know how big my screen is on compared to yours, but actually I see that in my face, so I'm going to move that there. Sarah, was that blocking anything for you at the moment, or were you able to see all that? Let me know, because if not, I'll run through how to navigate to this again. But anyways, open your panel, your Effects and Presets panel. Under Animation Presets, go to Text, and then we are going to go to, where is it? Animate In. And we're going to unfurl that, and then you're going to get a bunch of options, right? There's tons. Look at how many different ways you can animate text. Some of them are super cheesy, and I'm telling you right now, if you use some of them, it almost looks like kind of cheesy, old, outdated PowerPoint presentation animations. And so really the only one that you're going to use on here is okay, here's a couple that you can use. And I'll show you how to do this later. Decode. Decoding by a random character. Okay, cool. Thanks, Sarah. Decoding by a random character is almost like the letters change randomly, and then it will animate into whatever word you have initially typed. That one's really cool if you're doing like a digital kind of aesthetic or style, right? Like very Matrix kind of way of decoding, or like coding type of way, you know. That's why it's called the decode. And it also can work I think with I don't know if you don't use that for a typewriter effect. You know, there's a different way to do kind of like a typewriter effect where it kind of like looks like it's typing on screen one at a time. But right now we are just going to use the fade up words and the fade up characters. Lines would do one line at a time, but we're not doing that. We're doing by letters, which are also known as characters, and by words. And so we're going to take the fade up characters, and we are going to click and drag that to typography can be faded per letter. We're going to drag it to that layer. And all of a sudden you see that it kind of disappears, right? And that's because it added that animation preset to it. So it automatically added keyframes. The one thing I want to preface this with is make sure that your the timeline handle, the little thing is all the way like that, you scrub all the way back to wherever you want the animation to start. And so I actually want it to start at probably 12 frames. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. I'm going to scrub over to the 12th frame with a playhead. And then I'm going to take the fade up characters and I'm going to drag it onto that layer. that it can be faded per letter. Now there was a big boom. I don't know if you guys heard that. People set off fireworks in my neighborhood all the time. It's annoying. But anyways, so if we scrub back and we hit play, all of a sudden it's like a pre-done animation. It's all eased. You don't have to worry about doing it. But right, it kind of happens fast. So we want to kind of update the timing for that. So we're going to select the layer and we're going to hit U, and it's going to bring up the keyframes that it set here. Now, it doesn't have like the opacity parameter on here, right? This is a range selector, which is essentially another type of parameter that is kind of stacked inside of text and other techniques that we can use further on. Because if you take just a regular text that isn't animated and you scroll down and then you unfurl the text and then all of a sudden you got all these different path and options and this little animate thing, like this gets very in depth. It is a very powerful thing to use, but you don't want to start messing around in here and doing things that you're not sure of. But it gets very like big, right? Like things can, like all of a sudden there's a really long list of stuff that's happening and we don't want to see all of that. So again, that U shortcut is going to really be in handy when just wanting to see which parameters are keyframed. And so we're going to select U, and then remember to add more time to slow things down or to speed things up is the relationship of the distance between the keyframes. Right now, I think it's going a little fast, so I want to slow it down. So I'm going to select that last keyframe. I'm just going to drag it over to probably 3 minutes, 12 seconds right here. I'll just bring my playhead over to this area. If you hold down shift and scrub, it'll snap to keyframes. And it looks like it's on there perfectly. And so then when I play it, it's just a little bit slower. And so then we're going to do the same thing for typography can be faded per word. We're going to go scrub back to the 12 frames. And we are going to select fade up words. And we're going to click and drag. We're going to drop it on there. We're going to hit U. Select the layer. Hit U. Take that keyframe. Select it. And then we're going to take it. Hold shift and drag it out to 3 seconds, 12th frame. And then I'm going to save my work. And I'm going to hit play. Right now it looks cool. But let's like add something else, right? This isn't cool on its own. We want to do something a little more in-depth and complex. And so I have this word prepared here. Let me just close this out. I'm going to unfurl this and I'm going to show you guys my settings. It's still Roboto. It's actually a regular font. I think I might select that and, oh, never mind. It's still Roboto. Like if sometimes you'll notice if you just select the layer, it's not going to show you it'll show you what was last used up here. So you have to double click and it'll select the entire word or the text or whatever's in there. I'm happy you like it. And then my font is at 405 points. It's Roboto bold. Again, nothing weird here. Let me see. Let me actually do this. I'm not sure if this was an automatic thing that happened. Let me hit 0 and see what happens there. It might be automatic based on the type of the font. Nope, nothing there. All right, and so when setting this up, when creating your word, fade, I'm going to take the timeline, right? Because these words, the sentences that we have are still there. They just don't animate on screen until later. So I'm going to just scrub a little through the timeline so I can kind of use these two sentences as a reference. And notice that the height of my text, of the large word fade, is the same height as these two together. That's using the hierarchy, right? And kind of the rule. It's not double the amount because this is actually smaller, but it's double the height of the two of each one of these. And so I'm just going to actually take the position of this fade. And if you use your arrow keys, you can just kind of nudge it into place. And so I'm going to drop it right down on that line so I can use my grid. And everything's about the same height here. And, you know, normally we had to like adjust our anchor points, right? Well, this we're going to do a little something different because we want to have control over every single letter and not over the entire word. And so, but we want to add different parameters to it. I know we just did the faded per letter, but we want to kind of move these apart and separate these letters from each other. And so type and text inside of After Effects is vector based. So it's mathematically calculated on size. And so are the shapes and everything like that. It's essentially, like I said earlier, just an image. Text is just imagery. It's just a picture that we have put an association and kind of in terminology to, right? Just like any other image. But we want to essentially, instead of having it one vector, we want to create paths, right? We want each of these shapes to be outlined with a path so that we can have more of like a finite control over the word. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that layer and I'm going to right click here and scroll up to create. I want to make sure you guys can see that. And then I'm going to create shapes from text. And so as soon as I click that, you're going to notice two things happen. One, it created a new, hold on one second here. What do I got hiding? Like my screen thing. All right. Sorry, my one of my programs kind of went a little haywire there. But the two things that happened were the original text didn't get deleted. The original text layer wasn't deleted. It wasn't removed. It was just hidden from view. So if I were to click this and like this is called shying layers, right? If I were to unshy this layer and show it, and then shy this top layer that it created, the word's there. So there's two instances of it. But whenever you create outlines, it takes the original, it hides that, and then it creates a new one that has outlines after it. That's fine. You can leave the naming convention like that. That's not a problem. But what this does is it creates paths. And let me change this so it's a little easier to see. I'm going to change it to blue. I like blue. It's one of my favorite colors. In fact, I think I'm going to pick a dark blue because it'll be a little easier to see here. But notice that, you know, when I select regular text, you don't see outlines around each letter, each individual letter. But when I select one that's been outlined, you do see the paths. You can see the paths right here. And they're editable paths. So if we take this layer and we unfurl it, and then we unfurl the content, it's separated each one of these individual letters. And so if I were to continue going down in here and I were to continue opening that and I find the path, right? If I were to select this corner here, I can notice that it only has that one selected, right? It's the only little box here filled in. Everything else is empty. It means that that's the point. That's the vertex that I'm selected on. I can sit there and move it around. And I can animate that property because there's a little stopwatch next to it. You know, that's a really popular technique right now that people use with animating paths. It's very detailed work. We're not going to do that at the moment, but what's nice about creating the outlines, right, is you get more control over each letter. And so I'm going to kind of zoom out so you can see the full frame. In fact, I want to fit it to my screen. And I'm going to take the letter F and I'm going to bring that over here. And we're going to kind of, you know, that rule where you don't want to butt something up directly against the edge of the box or the screen. We're going to run it off a little bit. And then we're going to kind of take the A, D, and E and we're going to change the position. We're going to animate the position parameters of this and we're going to kind of spread it out and move it this way. And so we're going to unfurl down on this F and notice here there's another set of transform properties. This is not the transform properties that are for the entire layer. There's a separate set. The main set, when you hit P and T and S, all of those shortcuts, that is for the layer. What we're working with right now is the transform properties of this specific piece of the content. Like it's almost like it like opened it up and put it into a folder, right? So we're just focusing on this tab in the folder. And so we are going to, let me see here. I don't know why this has been such an issue for me. I'm just drawing a lot of dots. There we go. Sometimes this, for some reason, it's having an issue on this computer specifically, that little notating program. So I might have to re-download it. But anyways, we're going to drop down the transform property of the F. And we're going to move to, we're going to bring this playhead to probably, let's bring it to the 1 second on the timeline. And we're going to keyframe the position. And then we're going to do that to the rest of these. We're going to unfurl this, the A. We're going to unfurl the transform of the A. And we're going to keyframe that position. And then we're going to do the same for the D and then for the E. And in fact, this looks funny right here, like almost like there's two Ds. Whenever there is an empty center point, I think it's because there's this section right there. I'm not quite sure why it did that, but you know, we're not worrying about that now. Let me just move ahead. It just seems odd, right? Then I'm going to go down to the E, transform of the E, keyframe that position. All right, and so this seems rather daunting, right? Like this is really long. If I hit the tilde key and bring this up full screen, it is, let me move this aside. It is almost full screen, right? There's a lot of that part of the menu. And so that's when that U shortcut really comes in handy, when you can select the layer, hit U, and it only shows you the keyframes that you have there. And that's really the power of some of these shortcuts, right? But I'm going to animate backwards, right? Because this is where I want it to animate to. I'm not going to animate it really off right here. But we're going to scrub back. I'm going to go to 6 frame. Notice that it's 6 frame from the time code right there. And we're going to take the F position. And we are just going to change the X value. And we're going to drag it over. And we're going to kind of like, we're going to hug that frame, but notice that line isn't touching the frame, the edge of the F. If it were doing this, that is like, that doesn't look right. But if you're just to bring it over slightly here and just show part of it, giving the illusion that there's like more off the screen, that looks good, right? And so then we're going to take the E and we're going to kind of do the same thing, but we're going opposite, right? So we're going to take that X value, we're going to kind of move it just slightly off screen right there, probably right to there. And then we're going to take the D and then we're going to kind of space these out a little bit. I'm going to move that about there. And then, you know, visually make sure you're spacing about the same way apart. In fact, I want to swap these keyframes, right? Because I worked backwards, but in the wrong way. This is how I want the text to end up being. This is how the text will start. And so whenever this happens, because it will sometimes happen, you'll just drag and select the keyframes, and you can just drag them off to the side. And then I'm going to bring the playhead back to the 6 frames, select these keyframes, and I'm going to drag these back in the spot where I want them to be. And then I'm going to actually kind of make this happen quickly, right? Because I want it to happen before all of this type comes on screen. So I'm going to select these and I'm going to drag this back over here. That, remember, tightening the space between the keyframes makes it go faster. The further the keyframes are apart, the slower the animation. So I'm going to just play with this back. All right, that's not bad. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more time here. All right, nice. That looks much better there. All right. Now, one thing that we're going to talk about too, and it's kind of important. It brings a visual interest to your animation, and it's called offsetting or sequencing keyframes. What does that mean, right? It's essentially just making sure the animations don't start and end at the exact same time. And it just kind of makes it like into like a stacking effect or stacking order and how things kind of move into each other, right? So really the first two things that need to move and go into place are the F and the E. Like I want those in place first. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this A, and I want this to kind of be the slowest. So I'm going to move ahead probably 4 keyframes. So how do I do that without having to zoom in on my timeline like super far, without having to do this, right? I'm going to hit Control and hold down Control and hit the arrow key. And that scrubs through your timeline 1 keyframe at a time. It does nothing but scrub through for you. And so I just hit it twice. So I'm going to hit it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to make sure both of these keyframes are selected. And I'm going to drag that out. And then I'm going to go back 2 keyframes. So I'm going to hit Control, arrow back twice. And I'm going to take these, and I'm going to move it right there. And that way, what's going to happen is the D and the F are going to settle first. They're going to move and settle first. Then the D is going to follow. I'm sorry. The F and the E is going to move first and settle in place. Then the D will follow suit, and then the A will follow suit after that. Notice how they're kind of like in this diagonal on your dope sheet, the keyframes. It's just showing that it's sequenced. It's a great way to see that things are sequenced. And so when I play that, it kind of just moves them and slowly puts them into place. In fact, I actually really don't like it happening like that. It's a great thing to know. You can try it with some of your animations, but I actually didn't like the way that looked. Like I watched it right away. Probably the biggest thing is because I'm going to need to ease these, right? They need to be eased first before I do that. So I'm going to select all of these keyframes. I'm going to go into the graph editor. The Y is still on there. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go click on the X value or the F value. Or let me do this instead. Shift and select, or hit Control and select all of the lines. And then I'm just going to drag and select all the keyframes. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to ease them. Then I'm going to kind of go into each letter separately and just ease. Actually, you know what? Let's try changing. Let's do the easing a little bit of a different way. And it's really good if you want them to be all the same. If you want the easing, because we want all of them to be the same on each letter. We don't want them to be different. And so how do we do that, right? Like having to click the Bezier handles and control each one of them, that's really finite and that's really hard. And so what we want to do is we're going to go out of the graph editor. We're going to select all of these keyframes and we're going to right click on them. And down at the bottom it says keyframe velocity. Right down here. Whenever I have the menu selected, it does that. But if you right click keyframe velocity, and it brings up this little box. And this is a way to put in an exact amount. It always starts at the influence. Once things are eased, it always starts at 33.3. But we're going to go in here and I'm going to type in like 75, right? In fact, I want to undo that. Control Z. Right click keyframe velocity. Put in 75, but then also go to this influence on the outgoing. Don't forget to ease both sections. So 75 on the incoming influence, 75% on the outgoing influence. And then you're going to hit OK, and then it's going to do all that easing for you. Nice and smooth. And then now we can sequence. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sequence these the sentences to happen after the animation of fade comes on. I'm going to just adjust the timing of the letters here of the word fade, the title. I'm going to bring that over because I want it to be like a full second long. It was still a little too fast for me. There we go. That looks a lot nicer. That looks much better, right? It was a little too fast at first. I didn't like how fast it was moving. So I'm going to extend the time on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start, I want it to start fading in about right there. Kind of like almost right before it all settles into place, the title. And so I'm going to click on these. Let me drag that out of the way. I'm going to click on the 2 sentences that I have, and I'm going to hit U and bring up those keyframes. And then I'm going to select those keyframes on both the layers, and I'm just going to kind of drag them to where my playhead is at. And then I'm going to play this again. Nice. And so notice how when it's sequenced, it just looks a little bit nicer, right? Not everything, again, going back to legibility, right? You don't want things coming up on screen all at the same time. And so then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to sequence these two away from each other. And so I think the faded per letter is on top and faded per word is on bottom. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move, I'm going to probably let this one start to animate on right when this is fully settled, right when the title fade is fully settled. And so then I'm going to go back, scrub back to the beginning. Nice. And they almost look like they visually they almost look like they stop at the same spot, but it's just a smoother look overall to the animation with the sequencing of the keyframes and easing the keyframes. It's just like, it's almost like we're building a cake, right? And we've got these different layers to the cake and we're starting to decorate, right? This is the decorating part of the cake. This is adding all the sprinkles and the pretty piping and stuff onto it. And this is nice, but let's just add one more thing before we go here. And so I'm going to take all of these layers and I'm going to hit Shift Control C or right click and hit pre-compose, and I'm going to name this, right? I'm going to say fade typography pre-comp. And then I'm going to hit OK. Remember, it keeps it in the main one, but then it just adds everything into a folder, right? And it adds that pre-comp up here. And I'm going to save my work. And then I'm going to go back here to Effects and Presets. And I'm going to go down to, I think it's at Behaviors. Where is that at? Under Animation Presets again. So Effects Presets, Animation Presets, Behaviors. And then we're going to fade in and out frames. There's also fade in and out milliseconds. That is a very finite amount of time. That will take forever, right? So we just want to fade out via frames because then we can control the time a little bit more. So I'm going to grab that, and again I'm going to bring it over to the pre-comp, and I'm going to drag and put it on top of that layer. And remember what I said the first class, like whenever you pre-compose something and bring an effect in on top of it, it affects all the things below it without actually changing anything about that. It just, it affects like the folder essentially, right? And so what happens is up here with the project panel, it automatically changed over to your effects and presets panels and your fade in and out times. Now, I want to change the fade in. I don't need a fade in duration because we start on screen with nothing. Well, we do start on screen with something there. Let me see. Let's fade in. I want it to fade in within 6 frames, which means very short, right? Here's a half a second. That's a half of a second is 12 frames. 6 frames is a quarter of a second. So I want it to fade in within a quarter of a second of the animation starting. And then I want it to fade out at 24 frames, which is a full second after. So I want to start fading out at 6 seconds, right? And so that's what you're going to notice. In fact, one of the things that I did here, and it's good for you guys to see, is that I included the background layer on into this pre-comp, and I don't want that because I still want that background layer to be here. I just want to be fading out the type. And so what I'll do is I'll double click and open this pre-comp up again, and I'm going to select that background layer, hit Control X as in xylophone, and that cuts the layer. And then I'm going to go to the main fade layer that I was in, and I'm just going to click off into the timeline and hit Control V, and that's going to paste the background on there. And just make sure you bring that down below the text. And then if I hit play, it fades the text on, it moves, and then everything happens, and then it will fade the text out. And so that's fading. And we are right on time to finish. I'm going to save this file. Make sure you save it with your name. next class, we're going to talk more on creating our contact information. And then we're going to do a 3D version of our names as well. And then we're going to composite everything into one video and export that out as a final. And so that will be our Thursday class. Again, if I go click here and go to our module that we're on, you guys can get started. Go ahead and just do this introduction to motion graphics. Just get it done and over with, because it's great to know that information before you start animating with the text. And then go through here and you guys can get started on all of this stuff. And then if you kind of want to get ahead, you can start watching these videos. Again, this is Dr. Casey Farina, who taught the course previously, and I just kept his videos because they were good. And he's explaining essentially what I'm doing as well here. So if you need it broken up a little bit, you can just go through those and stuff. But other than that, we are good tonight. I hope you guys have a good night. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. And I think, Sarah, you're the only one with me. So, Sarah, I hope you have an awesome night. And enjoy. Get some dinner. Unless you're eating during the live stream, which I kind of wish I could do. But, all right, guys. Have a good night. See you later.